They appreciate this. Do we have any owners' comments? Gary, Mr. Hadsmith?
Good evening, Gary Huffman, 1471 Resolution Street. A couple of months ago, I was appointed as chairman of the Charter Review Task Force, and we've been meeting periodically for the last 2 months. I wanted to invite the public to attend our next meetings. We'd like your participation and comments as we discuss important changes to our governing documents, the charter and bylaws in particular. Quick rundown, we have a working group on July the 1st at 5 o'clock in the afternoon. All meetings are here in this building. That working group is with Bill Grindle, and it's about governance issues. We have a task force meeting on the next day, July 2nd, in this room at 6 o'clock in the evening, and we'll be looking at the inputs from the technology committee that provided us with that. More importantly, we have an open session that we're going to discuss 4 large issues that seem to be of importance to the public, and that is on Saturday, the 13th of July, between 10 in the morning and 12 noon. If you can't make that one, we're going to do it again, same issues, on later in August. The information will be promulgated through the Friday Flash. We're going to be talking about the request for proposal or RFP process for the management agent. We're going to be talking about group homes and residential treatment facilities. And we're going to talk about how to bring up topics in front of the board, which is kind of what I'm doing right now. How do we do that officially? And it's a session where everyone's comment is welcome, and we'll be addressing the implications of what we'd like to talk about. And that's it. Thank you.
Thank you, Gary. Mike, you had your hand, and then I'll get to you. Okay. Mike?
I slowed down so you could make a comment. I knew something was coming. Well, Gary said how you bring issues before the board, so I'm going to bring a couple that I'd like you to address tonight. Obviously, from the agenda, I can't tell what's going to be discussed, and it may come up in Steve's management report, and I might suggest that you consider maybe having Steve put together a few bullet points for his management comments. Then we could see that in advance, and we know what he's going to talk about. It'll give him more structure to it. He won't have as much lead time. We'll have more lead time, right, Steve?
Okay.
But then I would have to stand up here and say this. So I'd like to see if we could get an update on the Parks and Rec plan that we've been waiting for, an update on the county money that I know is still in flux, at least last word I had, and then the website, the launch of the website. Those 3, those may be on Steve's list. He's writing furiously, so if they're not, they are now. But doing that, because we get up before the meeting starts, and we really don't know what the agenda's coming, and that's where the real meat of what we're coming for probably is in terms of his comments, so appreciate that. The other thing, the action item 1 and 2 regarding the positions and a movement of money from the capital fund to the operating fund. So in executive session, you obviously approved 2.5 positions to add to staff. I can speculate and guess that those are for the ball fields. I guess we'll find out about that when we discuss that item. And I see you're going to fund it by pulling it from the capital. I guess you don't have another place to go for it. I would just remind us all that this ball field project, which I'm in favor of, has become a growing economic snowball. Somebody said snowball? Rolling and just picking up more and more steam all the time. My recollection is that it probably started in the high 2-point-something range, just under 3 million. And my guess now is that we're probably in the range of 4.5, if not north of that. So we're quickly approaching 100% increase. And now we're adding 2.5 positions, which we didn't have in the original plan. Nobody talked about that. You know, $114,000 present value over 10 years, that's about $800,000, you know, today that we're committing to pull from our capital funds. So I'm a little concerned where that's going, more than a little concerned. And I'd be interested to hear the comments there. I am a little surprised that we call it an increase in level of services, because I just think it's a new service. I think it's something new that we're adding. I'm not sure it's an increase in a level of service. We are taking an existing service and increasing it. So that level of service thing is getting bantered about quite a bit in meetings lately, so just wanted to make that comment also. Thanks a lot.
Thank you, Mike.
Thanks, Mike.
Yes, sir.
Need a little taller mic here. Hi, Rich Toast. My primary residence is 620 Teal Avenue, and I have a couple of concerns. One is to take off from what the other gentleman was talking about with the group homes. Can we get some kind of a status report on the group homes / halfway houses where we got all these teen girls? I understand there's presently 4, and a new one just cropped up on Golf Park, and I think the address is 502. Can somehow get a upgrade status on what's going on with them?
I think we'll see what I think Steve was,
Can talk about it during the
yeah, during his management report.
Okay, so we'll talk about it later. Okay.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you.
Any other public comment? Verify that the meeting is properly noticed.
Yes, it was.
Verify quorum.
Yes, you do.
Pledge of allegiance, please.
I pledge
allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Call the meeting to order. Motion to adopt the agenda.
So moved. Second?
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion to approve the minutes from the CROA Board meeting on 5/22 to 19 and CROA Board Workshop 6/3/19.
So moved on both.
Second.
Thank you.
I have one modification, if this is the place to do that.
This is it.
I did that in writing, but I would suggest just a clarification on the meeting minutes for May 22, which is the Board of Directors meeting. Item 1A, where it currently says that I motion to allow an additional $1,000 of expense for website launch expedited 2-hour support. And I just think it needs to be clarified to change the wording, something like, for website launch support with an expedited 2-hour response time for up to 8 hours.
That was the one that he had sent an email.
I sent an email, and we just needed to formally approve that. It was just a clarification. It sounded like we were going to get 2 hours of support from them, rather than a 2-hour response time.
Did you get that, Rachel?
So it was, okay, so that would be my amendment to the,
Motion to amend?
Yes, I accept that.
Okay. Mary Ann, you good with it, motioning? Okay. Or with the
thank you.
amendment?
Yes.
Any further discussion?
No.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Committee reports. All of the committee reports are in the packet. All you have to do is click on the link and everything comes up there. But is there anybody that is one of the committee members that would like to say anything specific regarding what's going on in their committee that's not already addressed? Anything that wants to be highlighted? JR, would you be able to take a quick moment to kind of update everybody on the 4th of July? Thank you.
We pretty confident of everything for the 4th of July right now. We have a detailed plan in place, traffic and safety, with the Osceola County Sheriff's Office. It's similar to the one we used in 2016. We did add a few more deputies and a few more traffic aids, such as electronic message boards to direct people to the park and ride we have at 215 Celebration Place. We'll be closing the streets downtown at 2 p.m. on July 3rd. We have a mix of Triton barriers, which are the Jersey, some people know them as Jersey barriers, that will be placed. They'll be filled with water downtown, and then sheriff's cars will fill in the gaps the night of the event. We have, there'll be a deputy basically stationed at every major traffic intersection in Celebration, including the lights. The lights will be manually controlled that night after the event, so hopefully alleviate traffic coming out. We've talked to the K-8 school and Community Presbyterian. Both are doing paid parking lots, and they will have volunteers out kind of shuffling people in that direction. One of the other things we added this year was to assist the residents in Town Center. Beginning at 5 o'clock on the 4th, there'll be a deputy stationed Campus Street and Celebration Avenue, and only residents that can produce a driver's license that they live in the Town Center area or hotel guests will be allowed past that point. So that'll should help with the traffic, the parking situation down there as well.
Thank you very much. Any questions regarding it? You sent a very detailed email this evening to the board. Thank you very much. I appreciate that. It was very comprehensive.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you for all the planning and all the effort of you and your team, JR. Thank you. We look forward to the guaranteed good weather too that you promised.
97 degrees.
Heat excluded.
Liaison report for CCDD? No? Okay. No report? Quick updates. The update on the board workshop schedule. In our last meeting, we had some conversations regarding we turned it from one meeting to perhaps an occasional workshop to one meeting and then 2 workshops every single month. So basically, staff is working for 3 big meetings every month, which is pretty extensive. And I think our board has gotten through a lot of the big hot topics that needed to be discussed. So we have decided for this summer to try and cut back on our workshops to just once a month, give it a trial period, see how it goes, and then we'll evaluate it at the end of summer in September. Any further comments regarding that from anybody?
So the next workshop is on Monday, July 1st, next
Right.
Monday.
Correct. And then the one following that would be, it's
In
the
August.
first August, but it's like the first week in August, right?
First Monday of August.
First Monday of August, okay. Thank you.
Yes.
Financial review. Oh, I guess not.
There's
Update on
2.
hurricane preparedness. That was a big one. That was one that I wanted to
There
hear.
was. So I sent our hurricane plan to the board last week. It has been updated and modified with all the new contact information for the CDD representatives, Thriving in Place Foundation, the 2 new board members that will represent the president and vice president. The plan is put together with our 98-hour out, 72-hour out, 48-hour, 24 hours for all of our park assets and amenities in town. And then it has our recovery plan of how we take everything down and how we get everything back out after storm. We also have our initial contact with the county with the Emergency Operations Center. So if there's any storms, once we're notified through National Weather Service and the EOC at the county activates and they reach a certain level, then we'll start communicating with them to be able to get any resources that are needed. We'll get the contact list together, which has all of our landscaping contractors, the ECD or the CCDD, and then the foundation Thriving in Place. And then Todd gets his crew out and they get to tearing things down and getting things secured. And then we start communicating. Now, we're not communicating information that we're making up. We're not subject matter experts at all on the weather. It's anything that we are getting from the county or from the National Weather Service. We try and get that out as quickly as possible. When the storm is imminent to hit and it becomes too dangerous for us to be at work sending information out, we'll utilize the CCDD's reverse 911 calls to the community, and we'll send out our cell service and our Friday Flash and emails, and we'll notify the community that town hall will be shut down. And then the minute the storm passes and it's safe for us to get back out, we'll assess all the damage and we'll begin the cleanup and the repair. We'll mobilize the landscaping companies and we'll get them out to start cleaning. So there's one area on the report that Todd and I will be working to update, and that's the new athletic complex, to make sure that that's added into that plan also. But we're confident. We've utilized that plan now and tweaked it over the last 3 hurricanes that we've experienced in Celebration. And last one, we were hit with 100-mile-an-hour winds at the front side of it, and it worked out really well for us. So we've tweaked it and modified it and updated it, and we've sent it to the board.
Very good, thank you. Any further comments from anybody?
I have two items related to the hurricane preparedness. One has to do with, you just mentioned notifying the community. Are you going to talk in your management report about part of the design of the new website or not?
I hadn't planned to.
Okay. If I may just comment about the new website that, I think one of the residents asked, might be Mike asked when it's going to unfold? Okay. So there's a feature on that that's like on a normal day like today, there'd be an empty bar, or maybe not even present, but in something where we have to notify the communities, an urgent bar would appear in the place that there's nothing right now. In other words, opening page, there'll be something scrolling, kind of like you see at the bottom of TV news, something scrolling, so there's going to be something as needed. And I think part of the initial rollout, when it happens, will say, hey, this is a new website, obviously the look is different, here's where you can go for some FAQs on the website. So with a hurricane, that would be an emergency notification vehicle, one of several. Is that a fair statement? Is that a fair statement, JR? Patrick?
And so that will be there stationary on the website so that you can go and look on the website and read that. But if you're signed up for Cell service, we'll do push notifications also.
Right.
So you'll get them on your smartwatch or your phone. So I encourage residents, if you're not signed up for Cell service, please get signed up, especially during hurricane season. There's been notices going out this week about traffic and work going on downtown and road work and those types of things, and it's really beneficial. When you're on the go, you don't always have time to go to the website, so this brings the information to you.
Right. So that's going to be a new feature. The other thing, and the seller service is a good example of that, is what is it, what can we do, what can our on-site team do ahead of time to communicate to residents what we need to be doing to be better prepared? Is it a good idea, and what's the best practice? I mean, you can go to Osceola County and there's a bunch of things, but how do we do that ahead of time? If someone wanted to print out a 1 or 2 page checklist for him or herself, one of the items would be sign up for seller service if you're not signed up. Sign up for Friday Flash if you're not signed up. If you have an outside porch and you have fans, you might consider taking off the blades. Take away projectiles. Things in a high-moving storm would be a projectile. Take down your umbrella. And then if you have, and we've had this before, what if you know your neighbor is abroad, whether permanently or for a month? What can you do to protect their property? What can we do ahead of time? Get your neighbor's phone number ahead of time or access. Just whatever some best practices are. Is it wise to fill your bathtub? Should you get sandbags? Whatever the status it would be.
Our level of expertise is protecting your assets and your amenities in the community, so
Understand.
your common areas. So what we communicate when it comes to best practices for prepping your home is what Channel 9 News is putting out, what the county's putting out. We're passing that information on to the homeowners. We don't want to give bad information, not really being experts on what you should do to prepare your house. So we want to give what the experts are putting together and pass that on.
Is there a link or anything like that maybe we can do for the new site?
We have for when hurricanes are coming, that's part of the notifications that are on the website and through cell services. He's saying to residents, here's where you can find the information to get your house
Might
prepared.
consider doing that, might consider an article in the Celebration News ahead of time so people can gather that before their power goes out.
Jerry Weiland wrote a really good article for June to prepare for the summer as part of the hurricane preparedness also. So we have had one in June.
There was another article that's also on the website now that links to Osceola County and the state FEMA that covers a lot of those topics.
Right.
And then what I'm calling for also is whatever we can do locally, seller service is only Celebration. Friday Flash is for us.
Anyone else? I guess my only comment was one issue that we ran into was construction debris for the last hurricane season. So I would like to make sure that everybody remembers that you are responsible for your own dumpsters and construction debris. The dumpster needs to be removed and emptied. That way your neighbor and your property are protected. The last thing we want is for construction debris to go through your window or your neighbor's window. So that would be one thing I want to make sure, that if you see any of your neighbors that have a dumpster, please make sure that they're aware that they need to take responsibility and remove it.
Good.
Any other comments? Recap of level of service executive session.
Well, I know that there were some very specific questions asked by Mr. Jackson to that, so I can address those. There were 3 part-time monitors for the athletic field complex that were added, and then there was 1 full-time supervisor for that complex. And that is to ensure that the Recreation Committee is going to be bringing back a recommendation, and they're going to have a workshop with you on Monday to discuss rules and regulations. And part of that is to have staff lining, setting up equipment, not having the leagues doing it themselves. So we need staffing to do that. They are looking at fees to offset those costs. And right now, their methodology for those fees, which we'll get a lot more detail on Monday when we talk about this, but their methodology is trying to be comparable with what surrounding areas are charging for their fees. And then looking at a year of expenses for that complex, a year's worth of revenue, and then coming back to the board to talk about a methodology for cost recovery and what type of percentage you want to look at for cost recovery. So that will be a big part of that conversation. The other full-time position that was added was a coordinator for the service area, and we feel like through service area maintenance fees that are paid right now, we're able to cover it for this year, and look at what that, if any adjustments needed for 2020 budgeting for service areas. So those are the positions that have been added. And to address the question of why is it called level of service, level of service really is driven by the board. We have some things that are in the charter that are required by the board to provide services for. That's covenants review of the community, make sure community standards are being met, the community-wide standard being met on houses. And then it is to maintain and protect your common area assets, and then it's to collect assessments. And those are kind of the bare bones of what mission critical that you're required to do. Anything above and beyond that is a level of service. So the question has been asked, do we need lifeguards? Technically, no, you don't need lifeguards. But if you want to provide a pool in the community that has lifeguards, if someone doesn't feel comfortable swimming without lifeguards, then that level of service is added at that pool. Now, there is an additional amenity. When it comes to level of service for that amenity, we could have said the leagues will paint the fields themselves and they'll put their own goals out, but the level of service that's being discussed is that should be done by staff and by management. So
To
that's why
protect
the
our
level of
assets.
service conversation's been taking place.
To protect our assets.
Right.
Yeah.
Yes.
I want to respond to one comment that Mike made, because I share the concern that the ball fields turned into something much bigger than the board before us apparently considered. However, the fees, the level of service, and the fees that are allocated to the ball field for the complex supervisor and 3 part-time people. The reason that we're moving money this year is because we have to front that before we get the fees in from the people that play. So I just want to be clear that when Mike makes the extrapolation to 10 years, that would be a huge number, and he's correct, if it happened that way. Our anticipation is that it is not anything like that. It's in fact probably a less than 12-month movement of money so that we can start recapturing the fees from the field. The problem that we've got, and Dory can speak to this from the Recreation Committee, is that we don't really know at this moment how much we can gain, how much we can charge, how much the usage will be. The Recreation Committee, and I've sat in on these meetings, not all of them, but many of them, have spent an incredible amount of time researching, trying to figure out what the prevailing rates are, what we could charge, what's still comparable. And, you know, to some extent, you're taking your best guess at this moment. My hope is that as soon as the fields get open and we start using them and seeing them, we'll be able to make some adjustments and say, you know what, we're paying for those staff members and we can not have to allocate that going forward. So I would not look at the $115,000 as a fixed amount that has to go in year after year after year. I actually think it's more like a 9 to 12 month number.
What else?
No, that's for the quick updates.
Okay, very good. Any further comments with regards to level of service for anybody? You good? I guess we're a management report, aren't we? Sorry. Action items.
Well, I do have a couple management, and then I don't know if Vaughn wants to comment on the financial items.
Recap of level of service, sorry. I'm sleeping now. Financial review.
You could skip me if you.
No, I tried that. I tried to skip everything else and go to you, and then I forgot.
That's going up.
Let me just make it bigger real quick.
Okay.
thanks, Susan, for providing all the figures on this. But it's basically the bullet statements that we're going to be using each meeting, kind of filling in the new figures as we move along in our budget. Gross revenue year-to-date as of May, we were above budget by $25,000. Expenses year-to-date as of the end of May, we're below budget by $41,000, but we expect to be at budget for the year. Operating cash strong at 1.5. I'm reading this so in case people can't see this. Reserve fund cash is at 2.4. We're down from 4.7 because of the capital improvement reserves of 2.3 that go to the ball fields to close the project. As of the end of May, we've paid 3.8 towards the fields. We expect to pay that figure now. It says we still expect to pay out another. It's not 500,000. It's going to be closer to just under 200. It's not 500 now. So we got about another 200 to add, and then there may be some change orders that come in, like you'll hear today, for little things that have to get added on. They're not thousands of dollars, but they're things that come up. And before I move on to the last point about the county agreement, I think Mike had a good point. When I remember, before I was on the board, I remember sitting in the audience and listening to the discussions about the ball fields and whether, what we want to do, and the vote was done and the ball fields were approved. All right. I don't know back then, I don't know if you were on the board back then, or if there was I don't know how much was looked into as far as staffing of the fields, the emergency phones and everything else that goes along with running this operation. What I don't want to see is this board or whoever's on the board in the future. I hate to see it when the surveys come back on the let's say the community center is at the top of the list. I think we need to really look into this a lot deeper this time. We have to look at maintenance, we have to look at staffing and everything else that goes along with it, and not just say, well, we can build this building for this much money. We found out from dealing with these fields that you just can't operate on the money that costs just to build the fields. We have to maintain them, we have to staff them, and it's turning into a lot more money than I thought it would be. So I think the bottom line is we're going to be at about, not quite 4.5, but maybe 4.2, certainly, and maybe a little more depending on what other change orders come in. So I think in the future, I think we really need to start looking more into what are the additional hidden costs when we do something like a big project like that.
Yeah, I would like it if there was a 2-month moratorium before a board gets a new election. The Mitch McConnell rule. You can't allocate millions of dollars before you're walking out the door and leaving it to the next board to figure out how to pay for it.
It's almost like an unfunded mandate.
It was, and the truth is, we had to make the best out of a very difficult situation. I think the fields are going to be something we're all proud of, and that we like, and that we think are going to be an asset to the community. We've done that by doing things like adding bathrooms. What a concept. Adding lights, adding lightning protection, putting a gate up. Those are things that had to be done. But in the rush to take a vote at the last hour, it was just, well, let's just do it, and then we'll leave it to somebody else to pay for it. That is really, really bad management. It's bad governance. And so I'm going to put in my plug for Gary and the Charter Task Force. These are the kinds of topics that should be discussed, and we should think about what kind of governance we want and whether or not we should lurch from one approach to another, year to year, election to election, because at the end of the day, we end up with these kinds of circumstances. And we do the best we can, but I don't think we can, as a new board coming in, say, yeah, we're not going to put bathrooms in. So
That's why we're talking about going to, instead of a one-year budget, going to a two-year budget. And that way we can plan ahead a lot more with the money and saying, well, not just this year, but next year, we're also going to need this much money, so. And speaking of money, I'll go to Mike's second point about the agreement. I think there's still one out there in writing, but, we had some sticking points. The county threw a couple things in there that, and we found out about them, and they came back, and one had to do with, instead of just saying District 1 access for county people coming in, they wanted to include the other District 2, because the county was divided on this issue into two districts, from what I understand. So I don't see that as a issue, but they also threw in there, instead of having the 25-year plan, where they wanted to change that, well, they did change it, and they changed the language to in perpetuity. They wanted this for life. And that kind of caught the board off guard big time. So for life is a long time. As long as celebration is around, as long as those fields are around, that's for life. So that's the holdup right now. It's supposedly going to a vote on July 8th at the county commission meeting for them to vote on the language that I believe that we proposed initially. And if they don't approve it, then, you know,
Do you mind if I clarify just a couple things with that? So this board approved a document, a agreement from the county that didn't include either one of those things that Vaughn just added there. It went in front of the county commission on June 3rd, I believe was the date. It was in a consent agenda item. Two of the commissioners had raised concerns with the county manager, deputy county manager, while walking the halls for briefings. And so the county manager decided to pull it. It was the county manager's decision to pull it before the vote because he wanted it to come back to celebration to see what the CROA board thought about those two changes. It's still going in front of the board on July 8th as a consent agenda item, I believe. And any commissioner can say, I want to pull that item and vote on it separately. And they can make a motion to amend the agreement to include those two things. Now, if they approve one or both of those two items, it's not a completed agreement yet because you all haven't agreed to those stipulations.
It's got to come back
So it would have
again,
to come
does.
back around to you. But the other point I want to add to this is that it's not for the entire complex. It does not include the fields at all. It's $2.1 million for public access to utilize the sidewalk trail and to utilize the open green space back behind the fields. So I think that some of the conversation was that it doesn't make a lot of sense for someone that lives in U-Haul Junction to drive out to Celebration just to walk up and down a pathway. So we'll see what the county comes back with on July 8th, and then you will have probably another vote after that, depending on what the county does with it.
So the answer is we don't have any money yet.
And I think to add to that, two things. One is we have not budgeted as though we will have the money. There's been no expectation of getting the money. I think we've been pretty clear-eyed about that. But secondly, as a general principle, I think this board has said consistently, we're not going to negotiate against ourselves. We don't know which commissioners are unhappy about this. We don't know specifically what they want. This becomes a situation in which the goalposts keep getting moved on us. And at some point, I think the only way to figure that out is to say, go ahead and go to a vote at the county level. Tell us what your views are. Go on record and just say you're either going to approve it or not. If they don't approve it, we'll deal with those consequences and go back and perhaps we renegotiate. But we can't negotiate in a vacuum, and that's what we've been asked to do. And you know, if some of you have contacts with county commissioners, feel free to contact them and say, are you the one that wanted to change this? We literally don't know who those people are. And that makes it virtually impossible for us to take any affirmative action. So we are hoping for a vote on July 8th, right?
July 8th.
But if I were betting on it, I would bet there isn't a vote on July 8th. So I just think that's the reality of this.
The general.
Well, and the county commissioners are under sunshine law, so they're not allowed to share with each other
Right.
why they don't want to do. So if you call them, they may be surprised to hear that another commissioner wants to do something with it, but it can't hurt.
I think the general board consensus was, we don't even have a contract with TCC in perpetuity. Why would we do something like that? The school has an end date. There's nothing that we do with any of our contracts that's in perpetuity. Why would we ever do something like that with such a valuable asset? And that seemed to be the general board consensus.
Correct. And that's a great segue into the management report, if that's okay. Ms. Vaughn, are you good with the financial report?
Oh, I'm done.
So there were a couple questions that were asked by homeowners, and I'll address those. I think the low-hanging fruit, the easiest one, is Mr. Jackson asked that I put some bullets together, and that is done. So that's an easy one. I can show you where to find those. When we send the board packet to the board, we also post it online. So on our existing website, which will be changing in a week, but on our existing website, it's under notices. And when you click on the meeting notice, it'll have an agenda. And when you go to the agenda, you can click, it's all hyperlinked. So you can click on management report, and it'll take you to our management report that has some bullets on what's going on in the items that I usually talk about. So that is already out there for the community to access and see. Let me go back up to the top here. And now it's too small for everybody to see. So the first item was the master plan. What's the status of the master plan? Surveys are all done. All the data is with the planners now, and they're compiling the report, the first draft and first version of the report for the board to review. I fully expect to have that by the end of this week. Last week they told us that they were almost done, and that we'll have something to review this week. It's not the final report yet, it's the initial draft for us to go over, review, and take a look at. The other question was the website, the status of the website. The website is scheduled to go live on January 1st. And
July.
I'm sorry, July 1st, not January 1st. Thank you. That could have caused me a lot of problems tonight.
Patrick, you got 6 more months.
I'm fast forwarding through Christmas
I
already.
think Patrick is like,
Patrick says no.
please just get this on.
July 1st is the go live date. This Friday Flash will have some instructions. I think our biggest thing that we're anticipating that could happen is as we go to a new website, a lot of people are already logged into the old website and they don't ever have to log in again because they just access it from the same computer. This one will probably ask you to log in again. If you forgot your password, there's a link that you can click on for I forgot my password. We're not going to have all your passwords here at Town Hall. You're going to have to change your password if you forgot your password. So we're going to have a little tutorial in the Friday Flash, and I believe up on our website, that will show you how to change your password. And then we'll have our staff prepared to help you through that if you forgot your password. We certainly do not anticipate things dropping or falling off of this website. It's really going to be getting on there and kind of patrolling your way through, maneuvering your way through, and finding things. But this website's a lot more intuitive. It's easier to find things, so it won't be as complicated as our existing website. You'll see all of our headers up top. Headers each have a drop-down, and it's pretty clear on where all your information is. But if you're still struggling to find anything, we're here to support you and help you find what you're looking for. So the website should be ready, it will be ready to go live on July 1st. And then the last item was for me to give an update on the group homes. So the group home that we had and that we had information on had affidavits signed by neighbors and residents, went completely through the finding process and appealed to the board of directors. That appeal took place 2 weeks ago, and the board upheld that appeal and did not grant them that. So they told them, they gave them actually 7 days to cease that activity. And I'll turn this over to Jackson because he did it so eloquently at the last meeting, but he can talk to you a little bit about what he told them on, and pretty much a warning to anybody that's trying to do this in the community. So if you don't mind, Jackson.
Sure. The community will not accept and will not tolerate businesses operating outside the rules, outside the law. And we will take every action that's available to us under the law. So in this particular property, that included a notice of eviction to the tenants, 7-day notice. It included the maximum amount of fines that we could impose by law. And we made it quite clear, I think, that this was to be communicated back to the homeowner, which was not the business owner. I mean, I think it's important to understand what's happening is this there's a particular organization that is renting properties from absentee owners in town. And so we have to deal at the CROA level with the owner. We can't deal with the renter or the tenant. So we made clear that that was unacceptable and that we would use every weapon in our arsenal, every legal approach that we could to enforce that. I was told that as of 5:30 tonight, there was no response from the owner or the business, the tenant, at that particular property. So the next step is we will send that to legal counsel, and we will begin the legal process, the mediation process that we're required to go through. In the interim, what's happened, as you pointed out, is that it appears that this same group has rented a multiple number of other properties throughout the community. So they've dispersed into smaller sections. The interesting part of that is that while that might meet the number of bodies per living room, it still seems, I think, and we will ask for a legal opinion, but it still seems to meet the definition of a boarding house. And they are running a business from those properties, and we are aggressive with that. On our agenda tonight, we have a second of those homes. You'll notice, board members, it's item number 1 in the non-compliance items for finding review, 1 and 2. And we are, again, taking the most aggressive action that we can. What I would say to the community is that we need you to tell us what you know. We need you to identify what's going on. We need signed statements where you've got them. We just need your vigilance. It's impossible for our inspectors to cover 4,000 plus properties and be looking specifically for this, though they are certainly aware of it and looking. So you identified an address today. That's the first I've heard of that specific address. I'm certain that Laura and her team will look into that.
Also did something to him right now.
Yeah, so I think it's important to understand that this board is doing absolutely everything we can do, and it is unacceptable to us. It's not fair to the children that are in those homes. It's absolutely the wrong way to be running and to be running this business. So I don't know that we could have made it any clearer at the meeting.
And it may be beneficial for me to just define the process. So when we're notified of these, we send the letter. It's considered an egregious offense. We send the letter and we immediately begin the process. As letter goes to the homeowner, not to the tenant. We're only working with the homeowner. So if homeowners are renting to these types of houses, they're going to incur the fines on this. And ultimately, they're going to have to sit in front of the board and try and justify why they're doing what they're doing. But once once the process starts, it goes in front of the board here for them to initiate this. Then it goes on the next covenant committee agenda, and they'll either uphold it or decline it. If they uphold it, the fines will be added to the account and the fining will start. So then they have an opportunity to come back and appeal to the board. You just heard Jackson's statement on the board's stance if they come and appeal to them. If they choose then at that point to not do anything that the board's asked them to do after that appeal, we are obligated, it's mandatory mediation. So we'll offer mediation. If they decline mediation, or if we go to mediation and an agreement can't be met, then we can begin litigation at that point. So litigation could ultimately lead to contempt of court and jail time. So that's the ultimate end game with this. And it's so important that we gather as much evidence as possible, because when our attorneys go, they need their toolkit fully packed with an arsenal to win. So affidavits work, we get pictures when we can, whatever proof that we can get that they're in violation of our covenants.
And one of the other things that we as management are doing, we've written, Laura Polis, our community standards manager, and I have written a blurb to go in the Friday Flash. We're going to work on a letter and send it to every realtor in town, because it's very important that the realtors understand, because these are owners who don't live in the community and may or may not know. They have an obligation to know, but let's just give a reminder to everyone. And then we'll also have a letter in an article in the Celebration News for August.
And I also want to add that this is not only group homes, but this is if you're doing an Airbnb, you're doing any type of short-term rentals, that is the same violation. That will lead to the same exact process that I just described.
And it's not, it is not a defense in our view as a board, I think, that you didn't know as an owner what was going on. That was the defense that was presented to us at the appeals board, and we rejected that out of hand. And it was a complete vote.
It's unanimous.
It was unanimous, and I think it would be unanimous every single time. So there is no wavering on this for us, I don't think.
Right.
I think we've said just about anything we can
Yeah.
legally
Yeah.
to say anything with regards to this. Did you, go ahead, sir. Well, I'm going to not accept that now, and I apologize, I just want to really stay on task. However, afterwards, please reach out to us and we'll be happy to talk to you. Is that fair enough? Thank you very much, I appreciate your understanding. Okay,
And that's everything from my management.
thank you very much. Action items. I'm going to ask, because the first four are all done at executive session. Is it possible to have a motion to have all four, have items 1 to 4 all voted on the same time?
So moved.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Thank you, Mary Ann. Any further discussion regarding these?
You think we need any more detail on any of these? I think Steve already covered like the positions.
1 and 2.
Yeah, okay. Anything else? Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Number 5 was removed, however, we are going to be discussing that on July 1st. So anybody that wants to come and discuss the complex, we'll be discussing that on Monday, July 1st.
A clarification question, if I may, on that
Absolutely.
particular one. That was posted in our board book, which means it's publicly available still
Do you
as
wanna make
part
a
of the
motion
action
to
agenda,
table?
or has that been removed from what's online for the public to see? The draft?
It was part of the official agenda. If you'd like to make a motion to just table that, and then we can revisit it after July 1st, then it's still on number 5, right, for the rules?
Yeah.
It's still showing up on.
My question is, there was a 10-page document in all the materials that are public. Is that still public? Or has that been removed?
No, I believe it's still public.
So point is, residents can read all the work
Oh,
that
absolutely,
the
yes.
committee has done.
Yeah, but it's a draft.
I know.
format, So we just asked you to remember that it will be
It's a draft.
finalized.
But residents can read and see what some of the conditions are.
Right.
In advance of it being finalized by the board in our discussion. We have a discussion at the workshop on Monday. So,
And the Recreation Committee has done, I think you met twice this week, right, Dory?
3 times.
3 times.
3 times, just to go through this.
A little committed.
So it's a big deal.
The research that they did, the draft document, even with my suggestions, even before my suggestions, is excellent. So I would just start with that. There's some questions that it raises, but that's part of the process.
Well, and I believe Susan just pulled it up. It looks like it has been stamped as removed, but what we can do is, once they're done, we'll post what we'll be discussing on Monday as part of the notice online. So we
Okay.
do encourage folks to take a look at it. And then the workshop is more of a discussion format, so if anybody wants to come to
Right.
that workshop
Understood.
meeting, you'll have an opportunity to come to the table and ask
So
questions.
do we
and
need an
discuss.
action item to remove it?
No, it's already been removed.
So we don't need to do
On
It
anything?
was already-
the one that's online, it's removed.
Yeah, it is here too. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, it was on ours too.
Okay, that's fine.
So number 6, motion to approve the Dog Park Committee resolution as reviewed and recommended by the Dog Park Committee. Have a second?
Second.
Further discussion? The recommendation was totally in line. It made sense.
It's one sentence.
Yeah, it was one sentence.
I do have a question on that, because I read their minutes, and there were actually 2 items, and maybe we already dealt with the first one. One was a new member that was in their minutes. Have we already voted on the new member? Because the resolution, the motion here is simply about
Up to
their resolution. Part of their minutes was a new member. Have we already voted on the new member?
We voted on the new member.
Last
I'm
week.
gonna say, I don't think
Okay,
it was
have we
last
approved
month.
that new member?
Yeah, we did.
We have,
Okay,
Yeah, we did.
Just
Yeah.
just to clarify that we have approved that new
We
member.
already did, yes.
Because that was in the recent minutes. All right.
Any further,
I'm okay. No.
thank you. Any
Thank
further
you.
discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Number 7, motion to renew the Pitney Bowes postage meter lease for a term of 60 months for $187 a month, or $2,244 annually out of the CJC operating expense.
So moved.
Thank you. Any second? Discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Number 8, motion to approve the 3-year contract for internet and phone at the athletic complex with Smart City in the amount of $3,606.72 annually. CROA operating expenditure.
A plain old telephone service.
This allows us.
Is that a technical term?
Well,
I thought that was hilarious.
It just
I
comes
never heard
with
of
the
it.
internet package, but it allows us to.
No, I'm just asking.
Yeah, no, it allows us to hook the King's security system up to it, and gives us internet access.
I like
up
the
it.
acronym though.
Yeah.
It's a
What
rotary
does that
phone
mean,
too.
plain old telephone service, okay. Any further discussion?
We haven't.
Oh, I didn't have a motion, sorry, you just had the comment.
I'll make the motion to approve.
I'll second.
Discussion.
A question on that. I recall with the, tell me if I'm right, with Comcast, I think it was part of the management report, Comcast has a free drop. How does that tie into this or not tie
We
into this?
used it at the dog park.
So that's going to be at the dog park?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Any other discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Number 9, motion to approve the change order for the extension of time to complete from Arnco Construction in the amount of $3,888, CROA capital improvement expenditure. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Thank you, Jackson. Do I have a second?
Second.
And I think I need to give some clarification on
That was
this.
Vaughn was the second.
Yep.
The Arnco construction contract was due to end on June 1st. We are at the mercy of Duke Energy, unfortunately, and Duke put a transformer in, but then they didn't put a meter in. They caused some damage on the property that they had to repair. But the damage on the property didn't cause the extension, though. It was the transformer in the meter. So this change order was in early June. Since there wasn't a second June workshop, it had to be added to this. This is it for change orders that I know of, because Friday I'm walking through with them, and it looks like the county's given them the all clear. I think we get the COs on Friday, and the project comes to an end from a construction standpoint. So I don't foresee any additional change orders coming to you at this time. There's always a long shot possibility that somebody says you don't get a CO, TCC may have something additional, so on reserve, but I have a very high confidence that this is gonna be the last one. Arnco had to still manage that property through the end of this month. They couldn't just walk away and leave it without managing, so that's what this additional cost is.
Further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Number 10.
Combine the next two.
Okay, I have a recommendation to combine number 10 and 11 regarding the salt cells for the two different, for Lakeside and Spring Park. Do I have a motion?
Motion.
Second.
Vaughn, or, you got it?
Vaughn can do it.
No, it was, Vaughn was second, sorry. Discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed?
Todd had his speech ready.
Oh, did you, I think he's up for the next one, actually.
Oh.
He's way ahead of us.
Okay.
Number 12, motion to approve the replacement of turf at the K-8 soccer field by New Leaf in the amount of $16,500, CROA replacement reserve expenditure. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Thank you, Vaughn. Do I have a second?
I'll second that.
Thank you. Yes, sir. You-
Any
obviously
question
you're
on
ready.
this? Well,
You're ready.
It's, we're only talking about the soccer field that's in the fenced area beyond the parking lot. It's the center area that, we only have an opportunity about once a year to be able to infill that. And the rest of the year, it gets highly abused. So, lots of kids, lots of activities. So hopefully this number will go down next year, that we won't see it, used as much. Fingers crossed. That's my goal, but can't guarantee that.
And I just want to add to that, part of our facility use agreement with Osceola County School Board is to maintain the facilities. We use them throughout the year. They're heavily beat with youth sports programming on there. So this isn't a replacement of the entire field. This is just to replace the worn out areas. And it is part of the reserve study.
I got this question. Todd, when our fields get put into place, activated over there, our new ones, are we going to be still maintaining this here?
We have
That's
that
our
a 10-year
agreement.
agreement.
That's
for
our
this.
agreement.
And how long is that agreement?
Through 2027.
Till 2027?
Correct.
Okay, so we'll still be paying this 35,000.
Hopefully, it's not as
A
much
year.
wear and tear, because we have a few more fields now to rotate, so we don't have everybody using the same area.
But anybody that uses the new fields are going to be paying. They don't pay, do they pay here?
They pay, it's a different rate than what's going to be proposed to you on Monday, though. Significantly different rate, so it's something that we'll be talking about.
Further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Number 13, motion to approve the landscape and turf materials throughout the CROA parks by Yellowstone in the amount of $19,374.50. CROA replacement reserve expenditure. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Thank you, Mary Ann. Do I have a second?
Second.
Thank you, Vaughn. Discussion.
As you'll see in there, there's multiple, plethora of things that we want them to do. Sod replacement at the dog park, large side and small side. That's just a housekeeping item that we'll continue to have to do. Some vine removal and cleanup of Reserve Park up in North Village to protect the trees that we have up there. And there's a few areas of new replacement landscaping. One was sand lace, and the other one is along East Village Field by the sports, or the pavilion.
Any questions? Further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Number 14, motion to
Thank you.
approve. Oh, thank you, Todd. I wasn't sure
Thanks,
if you were
Todd.
staying up for painting or not, but next, let's switch. Okay.
Suzanne's the painter.
Motion.
Todd's the,
That's right.
landscaper.
Motion to approve the painting of Golden Aster triplex by Central Waterproofing and Painting in the amount of $6,700. Golden Aster triplex service area replacement reserve expenditure. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Thank you, Vaughn. Do I have a second?
Second.
Thank you, Mary Ann.
So this is a reserve scheduled painting for Golden Aster triplex. We got several bids. Well, we got 3. We tried for 4, but 1 declined to bid. As you know, we've had a hard time getting bids lately. So this particular company was recommended to us from the company that we used to write the specifications. We've been using them for a couple years now. I have a lot of confidence in them. I also looked at the past jobs they've done. They've done townhomes, that caliber. So this is a relatively small job. It's a good one to kind of test out a new company, so we have more people in the mix.
Thank you. Any questions? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed?
Can I just make a quick comment? I just want to thank you, Susanna, for the work that you're doing with the service areas. I'm hopeful that by getting you an assistant, it'll make you even more effective. But I just want to acknowledge that this process of working on these projects, these service area projects, which go from 3 units on up to considerably larger size, is challenging at best. And it takes a real dedication to the community to do that. I am very, very appreciative of the effort that you've put in, particularly in the last week, in meeting with homeowners and working through the various challenges that they face. I
Thank
think it's
you.
important that the board recognize the incredible difficulty of finding contractors for these projects. We are not always commercial grade size on some of these. On some of them we are, and we're competing against new construction, and we're competing in a marketplace where a lot of vendors know that they can charge a premium. And I think that the work that you and Todd in particular have done to try and keep those under control is commendable, so thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you, Bob. Thank you, Jackson.
Thank you.
Number 15, motion to approve the wall repairs for Parkview Townhomes by Vice Painting in the amount of $7,495. Parkview Townhome Service Area Replacement Reserve Expenditure. Do I have a motion?
Motion to approve?
Second.
So that figure is wrong, I mean, the comma's wrong, right, in that number? Vice painting,
What's wrong,
Oh,
7,000?
the comma,
it's at 7,000?
7,495?
Why is
Yeah.
it wrong?
What's wrong?
Well, there's an extra zero in there.
On that.
Yeah,
That
that's
would
a
be-
zero is a lot of money.
Yeah, that would be 74,000. But it's even,
So it's 7,490.
7,495.
Oh.
95,
Yeah.
Oh, and 95.
Yeah, the
So-
zero's stuck in there.
That's no different than
There's multiple
74,000.
places, so there's an action item that
said it right.
everybody's seeing right now, but then in the board packet, there's an additional supporting information. So that's where the
Oh, where that's where the other,
extra.
okay.
That's why it's called
We'll make
vice
that,
painting.
right, we'll make that.
So this is for the wall repairs at Parkview. I'm sure you've seen them driving out there. We've had similar problems across the community where, the old materials used were metal, and so the corner beading, and especially all those aluminum metal railings are just rusting, and causing cracking down the side. So Matt Weiss and his company is painting all of them, and they've done work in the past, so it was just perfect to kind of put them in there, have them remove the railings. They replace the metal beads with plastic, and it's all better.
Any further discussion or comments? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed?
No.
Number 16, motion to approve the purchase of shutters for Parkview Townhomes from the Architectural Depot in the amount of $11,458.59, Parkview Townhome Service Area Replacement Reserve. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Thank you, Vaughn. Do I have a second?
Second.
Thank you, Mary Ann.
This is the shutter replacement that's in conjunction with the painting, so whenever the painting happens, they remove the shutters, we get new ones, we put them on, so we order them through Architectural Depot. We've done that several times. They're good quality.
Questions, comments? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed?
Can I just ask one question? Are they replacing the shutters at Spring Park?
Spring Park Terraces? I don't know. That is
I'm just curious.
condominiums?
Yeah.
Do you happen to know?
I
Yes.
didn't know if they're putting new
The
ones
answer
up
is
or painting the old
Yes,
ones.
they say. So,
They are replacing.
yes,
Oh.
that's what Todd says.
Just curious, because
I'm
they
not
aren't up
aware.
yet, so I just wondered.
Yeah.
Number 17, motion
Okay.
to approve to initiate the fining process for 41 non-compliance items.
That number
Yeah,
changed to
we're gonna take some
34.
stuff here separately, so,
And so that the folks that are watching at home and our audience members understand, we go out the day of and look to see if they've met the issues, and then if they do, we remove them and give the board a printed sheet so they can see that.
Could I raise a question here?
Please.
Item, Laura, can you? My question has to do with item number 2 on the list.
Yes.
Why has that been removed?
So what happens if it's anything along those lines? If the item is not at the property the day of, we usually consider it closed at that point. That would be the same for anything in that type of category.
Yeah, I've seen that item there as recently as Sunday. So
We can find egregious after this point, if it's moved, and then if it's a shell game and it's moved and brought back, then we can go straight to an egregious finding after this point.
Right.
Okay. And since this is one of the properties where we're deeply concerned about the behavior of the tenant, I think we should be vigilant about not letting them play a shell game.
In other words, check back in a couple days.
Well, yeah, I mean.
Or-
I'll drive
or tomorrow.
Or tomorrow.
Right, I mean,
It may just be removed for the day,
So we're gonna-
for your last
They may be
review.
out on the boat today.
right. I mean, like I said, it's the same for any sort of
Okay.
RVs, commercial parking, anything along those lines. It's usually we look the day of,
Okay.
and then if it's not there, we usually consider it a closed item, so.
Is there a way that we could not make it a closed item, but a tabled item at this point? Or does that change?
Well, even if you table it, it would have to come back for you to initiate the next one, but what we'll do is if we see it again, it'll be labeled as egregious, and it'll just be, here's the fine.
Okay, great, thank you.
Okay.
Okay. Do we want to take anything separately, or do we want to take them as one? Okay.
I'll make a motion to approve the 34 items on the list.
And I'll second.
Discussion?
I did a second. Was that?
I said discussion,
Oh,
sorry.
discussion, sorry.
Questions, comments,
The third,
discussion?
fifth?
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Number 18, motion to approve to convert one fine to a specific assessment, S9.
Can you tell us what this, why, I mean, this is a fairly large amount.
Do you want to do a motion in a second first, and then
Sure.
we'll discuss it?
I'll make a motion to approve.
Okay,
Second.
thank you, Mary Ann. Okay.
You want to tell us about this?
So if you look, the list of properties that we also maintain the lawn on, this is the same property on there as well. From what we've known and from what our people handling the accounting side and stuff have noticed, this is, from what we've noticed, an abandoned home. So it has fallen into some pretty bad repairs. So that's why this is such a high amount for a
And
fine.
it's 6 different items at the full amount.
Correct. It was 6 different categories, so it could also be multiple items within those categories that it's being fined for.
We don't have any information that it's in foreclosure.
Not that not that we're aware of, but
Well, the fines are a little bit different than the past due assessments, where you want to convert these so that they'll show up as assessments.
I'm
So you
just
can
asking
collect.
if we know if this particular
Oh,
property.
I understand.
yeah, not that we're aware of at the time, but you know how those can change pretty regularly, so.
Any questions, comments? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Number 19. Do you have
I
any-
would move to approve all of management's recommendations, which I believe were to recommend the request for everything except item 14, which was
13. 13. Items 1 to 12.
1 to 12, and then it would jump to 14 for some reason. Okay, so item 13. So I would move to approve items 1 to 12 as recommended by management, and then we can talk about the last item.
Have a second?
Second.
Discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay. And then motion to approve the partial fee waiver request in the amount of, well, $64.
So moved. And Jackson was invoiced too.
Second.
Discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay. Board comments? Anybody? Comments?
I know you were trying to make it till 7.
Hey, I gotta
just-
say-
I mean, just for,
Hey,
just the
7:08,
elephant in the room.
I'll take responsibility. I was long-winded tonight, so I'll take responsibility.
So Steve stole 8 minutes from
That's
you.
it.
He did, it's okay, I'll forgive you on that one. Well,
Motion to adjourn.
yeah, thank you. Do I have a second to adjourn?
Second.
Thank you.
Happy 4th,
Thank
happy
you.
Independence
Have a
Day.
great holiday. The festivities are going to be a lot of fun.
And we'll see you all there.
Yeah.